Hello, ladies. Welcome to Elizabeth's Bible study. This is the first video that I have done. The first topic that I would like to cover is lust. That seems to be a problem with everybody, particularly women, because I personally believe that, we as women, we can easily tempt guys into things. And yeah, where I went to school, there were a lot of dropouts because the people got married, had children too soon, gave into their lust. I'd like to read Proverbs 5. My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Turn your ear to my words of insight, that you may maintain discretion and your lips may preserve knowledge. For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to the way of life. Her paths wander aimlessly, but she does not know it. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you lose your honor to others and your dignity to one who is cruel, lest strangers feast on your wealth and your toil enrich the house of another. At the end of your life, you will groan when your flesh and body are spent. You will say, how I hated discipline, how my heart spurned correction. I would not obey my teachers or turn my ear to my instructors, and I was soon in serious trouble in the assembly of God's people. Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares? Let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always. May you never be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why embrace the bosom of a wayward woman? For your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all your paths. The evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sins hold them fast. For lack of discipline they will die, led astray by their own great folly. And one of the most powerful passages in the Bible dealing with lust and adultery is Proverbs 5. The poetic genre adds particular potency as lust is personified as a seductress, making her lies, foolishness, and deceptive tactics more clearly exposed. Now, my study on lust breaks a proverbial story into 3 sections. First section is verses 1 through 6, then 6 through 14, and then 14 to 23. So looking at verses 1 through 6, just so you know, I'm using the recent New International Version. You are more than welcome to use any other version that you prefer. The phrase, her lips drip honey and her speech is smoother than oil, points to how subtle and seducing the temptation to sexual sin is. These words also point out to the promise of sweetness and satisfaction. The teacher reminds the student that these words are a lie, and while lust and illicit sex seem sweet at the time, afterward they are bitter as gall. The teacher's words underscore that there is always an afterward and a price to be paid for illicit sex. It is a double-edged sword, as it is said. The smooth talk and promise of life and fulfillment conceal the deadly backside of the sword. The proverb says the woman's path leads to the grave, most likely meaning spiritual death and a shattered life. But often there are physical consequences to lust and adultery as well. Next part is verses 6 through 14. In this section, there lies a critical warning. The teacher tells his student to turn aside, or as the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 6:18, to flee from sexual morality, to paraphrase the verse. The best path to avoiding sexual sin is to do everything within one's power to steer clear of temptation and compromising situations. Now, this section mentions 3 consequences to lust that we are to keep in mind, because the words of the seductress lead us astray. It's giving into your strength to another and your years to one who is cruel, paints the picture of enslavement. Sexual relationships, as well as sexual and pornographic involvement, often lead to enslavement. In exercising sexual freedom, freedom is fortified. The second result is regret. The proverb says, you will groan later in your life. The full consequences of lust and sexual sin continue to become apparent, continue to unfold over the length of our lives. And it leaves even the most foolish at the end of their life with terrible regrets and remorse. Last is the consequence of public shame. I went to school with, I wasn't in her classes, but there was this girl who wound up strip teasing to help pay for college. And then she was recruited by someone in the adult entertainment industry, and now she's in Los Angeles. She joined a sorority that was trying to get established on campus with us. Unfortunately, the sorority headquarters got wind of it and closed the sorority chapter down. So she actually regrets going into it, but deep down she knows that. But what she tells us is that she regrets not keeping a separate life from her sorority, from her adult entertainment life. But I think deep down she knows she's going to regret it later in life. Again, the proverb says that I have come to, the end or the brink of utter ruin. It's in the midst of the whole assembly. Now, sexual sins are often the most private and carry with them the most shame. The teacher reminds his student that sexual sin, sooner or later, is publicly exposed, leading to unbearable shame. Given that I'm a recent college graduate and I was in academia, just think about teachers, graduate assistants, professors with tenure, teachers at the high school and lower levels. They have inappropriate relationships with their teachers, their mentors, or people who are above them. And it does not lead well. It gets known to the university and sometimes even legal charges. Just look at any school. I'm sure somewhere down the road they have had or will soon have a teacher or a student who has sexually sinned. Second part, verses 14 through 23. Now, in this section, there are several solutions here. First, the teacher advises to find delight and satisfaction in one's own life. Now, this is more than a simple choice, but a lifestyle that continuously cultivates and inclines the heart toward one's own husband or wife, much like keeping our zeal always serving the Lord. It does not allow the passions to diminish or divert. This principle can certainly be expanded to those who are single, like me, cultivating one's heart toward the Lord or toward the future promise of a husband. The principle is choosing to direct and cultivates our passion in the right direction. Another solution, which is sort of negative, but is found in the last verse. He will die, or the adulterer will die for lack of discipline. The corresponding virtue to lust is self-control. All efforts to cultivate growth in self-control can bear fruit in fighting lust. Self-control is the ability to say no to our passions and desires to be satisfied. Spiritual disciplines, such as the fasting of food or times of silence, can be a helpful exercise in growing our ability to control fleshly urges. Now, the last corrective mentioned in the verse is the acknowledgement of the Lord. For a man's way are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all his paths. Now, the rationalization of lust can be, no one will ever know. But the teacher reminds us that all we do is always in full view of the Lord, and nothing can be kept hidden from him. Again, God is always watching us. I don't want to do anything that I wouldn't even want my mom, if she was still alive, to know about. We got to think about that. Same thing with sexual harassment in the schools and workplaces. Like, you may compliment on someone on how they look, but imagine if it was someone in your own family. How would you compliment that? Keep it, professional, or just say, "Hey, I noticed you're wearing this new thing. It looks nice." Don't say what it reminds you. And I think that's what guys have issues with. So. But that leads to modesty, which I hope to do another study on. I haven't prepared it yet. So, let's see my notes. Now, first question that I want you to ask yourselves is, the poetic phrases drip honey and smoother than oil. What do these describe? And have you ever fallen prey to this? Well, I'm not going to fully disclose things, but I have. The worst consequence of lust or adultery that you've seen or heard about. Think about that. For me, it's one of the graduate assistants who was being investigated for child pornography charges at the university where I graduated from a week ago. It was this semester, spring 2013. They don't do background checks on graduate teaching assistants, but since August, he was being investigated by the state police in the state where I went to. And obviously, pornography, which is the next question I have for you, is now there's no question that pornography is lust, even if it's acting. Well, who knows? I don't want to go there. But do you think it's also a form of adultery? I think it is, because whether you're married in the eyes of the church or of the law, you're still being sexually unfaithful to people. You keep going from one person to another person. So I think pornography is adultery. Now, The proverb says, her feet go down to the death, her steps lead straight to the grave. And I think this is most likely the idea of spiritual death or a ruined life. Now, when the teacher cautions a student to turn aside and keep away from lust, now can you think of a situation where you were able to steer clear of a compromising situation? What did you do? Hello? Sorry, ladies, I thought I heard someone at the door. Let me think of a compromising situation. This is my first one. I usually don't have my answers prepared because I want it to be in the moment with you. What I think, let's just say, I'm going to not just disclose the compromising situation, but I went back to what I said earlier. God is watching me. Do I want the people who I know on this life and earth, physical, like the people who I physically see every day, to know? That's what I ask myself. Again, from the proverb says, at the end of your life you will groan. Now, speaking of regret, from what relationship, lust, or other sexual involvement do you still carry regrets or scars? Well, for me, it was my freshman year of college. I met this girl. And, I know I'm still trying to deal with my lesbian tendencies, but let's just say I gave into lust. And I regret doing that, and I want to actually fully admit that I don't necessarily have my virginity. In terms of heterosexual virginity, I've never been with a man, but I feel that I lost some virginity, and I really regret giving into that. The final verse says, it talks about the brink of utter ruin. Now, has something that you or someone else have done in the sexual area ever caused you to lose the respect for others or lead to embarrassment? I think, just think about that. For me, there were some teachers that I know who were unfaithful, and it made me lose respect for them. A teacher in my high school had an inappropriate relationship outside of school hours with a classmate of mine, and I lost respect for her. She was a very popular teacher. Everyone liked her. She was popular with the guys, if you know what I mean. But that's when she strayed. She should have been where she may have been. She should. Some people say she should have been doing that, exploring that with her husband or her boyfriend at the time. I think she was dating, but regardless of who she was doing that with, she shouldn't have done it with a student. Prescriptions for sexual sin, where are they found here? And I think that this is the idea of choosing to find your fulfillment in your spouse, your husband, choosing to keep the relationship fresh, and remember that all things are done in full view of the Lord. Now, the last verse also mentions the idea of self-control. Again, self-control. Now, God's design for sex and marriage was apparently meant to be beautiful. What has gone wrong? Do you think a marriage can still be this way? Just think about it. I'm still thinking about it. It is important to bring out that God's design for marriage and sex was meant to be beautiful. It is. But somehow our society has made it turn into lust. I think people are marrying too early today. I have a degree in psychology, and I think with the expanding age expectancy, development has expanded while our bodies biologically, are still encourage us to procreate as we should, but not so early. Study, get your college stuff done, get a stable career. Don't date the first person, don't marry the first person you date. Do you think premarital sex is drinking from another cistern? I think the question about whether it's a tricky one, and I won't read exactly what I have in my notes. But this is a tough situation. How does God expect us to keep from sexual sin before we have our own cistern? Now, is that possible? Think about your experiences. Think about your rate on a scale of 1 to 10 of self-control. What are some ways to strengthen and develop your self-control? From a psychological point of view, impulses can be a hard thing for people, especially sex offenders. But bringing psychology and spirituality together, it makes sense. We need to be able to control our impulses together. So, some ways that I have strengthened and developed my self-control is prayer. Again, I always think, God is watching me. Do I even want my own dad, my legal dad, to see this? If my mom were still alive, would she want her daughter to see this? Now, to conclude, having read through this age-old wisdom on the dangers of adultery and lust, now think through on your own one application point you would like to make in your life. Lust is an important issue, and I think while both men and women need to exercise self-control and lust and what they see, I think we women need it more because, what if some of us can get pregnant, do get pregnant? We have to carry the baby around, but it's also tough on the guy if, child support payments, are involved. So that's one thing to think about. So let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for gathering fellow women of God to this video study, my first on lust. Thank you for helping me to wing my first women's Bible study session. Please help all of us women to grow as you see fit in your lives. Please help us grow to be the better Christian woman that you want us to be.